I'm gonna go all the way underground on this. I gotta go with my guy Blueprint with his 1988 album, put
my
out
guy
on the
Blueprint.
Rhymesayers record label. Blueprint, I was a big fan of from like the Soul Position days. A lot of what he was doing, you know, around the Scribble Jam era. He was already somebody that, you know, people were kind of checking for. But he put out an album in 2005 that was an homage to 1988. He produced the entire thing himself. He was absolutely going nuts in terms of his writing and his performance on it. It is a record that I don't expect a lot of people to necessarily know because Blueprint is not necessarily a household name when we're talking about 2005. But this was a record, and I remember too. I think in 2005 I was about to start writing for OK Player, and you had to do a submission of like let's see like a review, a sample of you reviewing a record. And I reviewed this record, and I was so geeked about it that I like dedicated an unnecessary amount of space to just quoting the lyrics because he had so many great lyrics. He was talking about the state of, you know, in underground hip hop and, you know, just burning the sort of torch for like making real shit and, you know, decrying what had been happening in the industry. This is a record that holds a special place in my heart. He just reissued it on vinyl, I believe, for the first time. I got a copy of it
And
somewhere.
it's doing his anniversary show for that, the 20-year anniversary show is like now. It's like this month.
Exactly. So it's that's a special record for me. That is I'm going super underground for my underground pick. Blueprints 1988.
Shout out my dude Blueprint. There may or may not be another Blueprint reference as we continue on from somebody that is on this panel.
As we proceed to give you what you need. Can we still say that, or is that? Do you have to throw that statement out all the way? I don't know. Justin, what do you got for underground?
Sean Price, Monkey Bars. Easy. Easy. It's young. I mean, it's one of the hardest projects, period, in my opinion. Two, I think, you know, everything Duck Down was doing right at that point in time with the sort of reintroducing Smith & Wesson, Helter Skelter, Buckshot, under the same, like, similar marketing, you know, taking these artists from the late 90s who were celebrated and putting them out with a fresh look in the early 2000s. In 2005, like that whole early 2000s run when they were putting these projects out, to me, ended up being a real statement in the sense of, while we were talking about how critical people were of hip hop in 2005 in general, you're in a space where there's so much consolidation in media from a label standpoint to television and radio standpoint. So everybody around every region is hearing the same albums, hearing the same songs, turning on Sucker Free Sunday and watching the same videos. Regionalism was gone. And here comes Duck Down, particularly this project, represent for a whole different sound of hip hop and doing it really big at the same time, right? And I think when I look at what Duck Down did with that, it looks a lot like what Mass Appeal is doing now by releasing a bunch of different projects. So it's pioneering in that. But if you just go top to bottom, from production to bars, you got Sean Price stepping away from his Ruck moniker, taking his standing tall with his own name straight out. You got Ninth Wonder production on there. You got Crisis production on there. It represented for a whole side of hip hop that I loved so much in the 90s in a fresh way in the early 2000s with fresh producers around them at the same time. You know, I can listen to Onion Head for the rest of my life and everything will be fine.
The thing about that album that I just gotta, so that was clearly the pick that I was gonna go with if I had a chance.
It was on my list as well. It was on my list as well.
The thing about that record is that, so I love the first Helter Skelter album, right? But to me, and I've had this conversation with people a lot. Helter Skelter was rock, and then there's another guy in the group too. Like that was kind of how I looked at Helter Skelter as a 90s head. It was like, yeah, the other guy, you know, but like
that was the prevailing feeling.
Yeah.
I do know some people, Justin, and I call bullshit on these motherfuckers. I do know people that's like, nah, my favorite was Sean Price. I was like, no, he wasn't.
Revisionist.
No,
That's revisionist.
nobody's favorite was Sean Price was
Right.
Ruck from Ruck and Rock.
You probably
Like,
didn't
that's
even know
not
his name
true.
was Sean Price. Probably didn't even know
No,
his real name then.
it was Rock, and then it was his partner. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And the crazy shit about hearing. So I remember when they started doing the promotion for those 3 albums for the chemistry and right, and I remember being like, the other guy from Helter Skelter is doing a solo album. Like, why would you have him do the album? And I know that P was doing some. He had started to do some like solo songs and some freestyle. Some things were starting, but I hadn't. First thing I saw was that advertisement, because the advertisement was in the magazines. It was like a
Right. That's
three-fold
what.
spread for that artwork or whatever. And I'm like, and he changed his name? I was like, God, I'm all confused.
You're right.
I remember hearing Boom Bye. I mean, I'm just going like, and then Pete my words, and I'm just like,
Right. Everything
what
words.
the fuck is going on here?
Yeah.
And P,
Just,
I know they credit, and rightfully so, they credit Rock Marcy with the revolution that Rock was able to bring in. But you can't talk about that without
Can't do
talking
it.
about Sean Price
Can't
Yep.
do it.
and what he did 5 years earlier.
Right.
From a quote unquote boom bap perspective, and bringing so going back to what we were talking about before, like that's what I was looking for.
Right.
Was this shit. Like, oh, okay. Word. Like, all right, you know what I mean? So like that album was a big game changer to me.
Same
Man,
here.
Monkey
It
Bar
was so.
is crazy.
It was so honest, and it was hilarious at the same
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
You know what I
Talking
mean?
about how
Like,
broke he was, talking about,
right.
just being like
the brokest rapper
felt,
you know.
yeah, it felt like revolutionary at the time that you could be that self-effacing, but also like still, but I will fucking kick your ass.
Right.
Yo.
It wasn't emo, it wasn't like, oh yeah, I'm like a flawed human being. It was like, I'm fucking broke. I have all these relationship problems, but like,
Right.
don't fucking, look at me the wrong way. I'm gonna fucking bust your ass.
The relationship stuff is so funny. He's over there talking about, he's like, what did he say? He said, gotta think about my ex to get a wreck. Gotta take X when I'm a wreck. Like, dog, you do not like this chick. You do not like this chick at all.
Wow.
That's
Oh, Boom Bye
crazy.
is not on this album, but what was I talking? Oh yeah, Boom Bye is
No,
on
it
this
is.
album. Yeah.
Boom Bye is on there.
Crazy.
Crazy. Yeah, to me, that's a perfect album.
He
I
got a song
wouldn't.
called "I Love You, Bitch."
Right.
Like the title is "I Love You, Bitch." Like,
That's crazy.
crazy. Brokest rapper you know? Who is
Right.
rapping like that? Brokest rapper you know? Like, oh man, I love that album. Because I didn't get to pick Monkey Bars, and I'm so hurt. But you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna come back with a often forgotten album, but was instrumental in my life. I won't talk about it much. We'll keep it moving. But the GZA Grandmasters dropped in 2005, and that album was big for me because my first project that I put out as a solo artist was in 2005, which was a remix of Grandmasters called MidaZ vs. Muggs, because Muggs had dropped the instrumentals to that project, and I was trying to do the reverse Knife Wonders. So I remixed the whole album, and that was kind of my first solo thing that I had out. But I just remember hearing Grandmasters and being like, oh, Wu-Tang's not dead 100%. This is, like, we there's still hope, you know what I'm saying, for the W to shine. But that album was crazy. I thought it was really dope. Probably, outside of Liquid Swords, probably my favorite GZA album, like outside of Liquid Swords. So yeah, really crazy record, and that would be my number 2. Shout out, let me not say that because MJ might have it. So
we'll do our
fall back.
honorable mentions at the end.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I know you don't have this one. I know you don't have this one. So mine, it's 2005. All right, so let me explain the thing. So in 2005, Texas started to come on the scene. This is where you spoke about Mike Jones earlier, Paul Wall, Chamillionaire, Slim Thug. Those were like the front runners of hip hop at the time. But before that, Chamillionaire and Paul Wall were in a rap group together. And the first album they had was called Get Your Mind Correct. It's just maybe like 2002, something like that, 3, something like that. And what happened was they all kind of got solo deals, and Chamillionaire and Paul Wall broke apart, but they were still contractually signed as a group because they were in a group together. And so the label, it was some issues with money on the first album. The label was paid in full, which they weren't. But yeah, so with the label, they still had their, the ownership of these records of them together. And so as they were blowing up separately, this is their time to cash in on the both of them at their primes at the time. And so they put together the records that they had left of them, and it's an album called Controversy Sales.
Hmm.
And while this was controversial was because Chamillionaire, he was the mixtape messiah. He was the first mixtape rapper before Lil Wayne. He was the mixtape everything. So on all his mixtapes, he was saying my album is going to be called Controversy Sales. Controversy Sales. So they steal the name and use it as a Chamillionaire and Paul Wall album together.
Ah,
And they beat him. Yeah, they beat him to the punch, which is why Millionaire's album ended up being called Sound of Revenge in 2005. But it was supposed to be Controversy Sales. And he has like a cult like following. So all of us went and bought this album thinking there's no internet at this time for Chamillionaire to explain this to us.
right.
So we just like, oh, okay, I guess this is him and Paul are cool and they putting this out. So we all bought it. And I think it ended up going like 30 on the hip hop charts and something like that. So it went pretty high. But the name of the album is called Controversy Sales. It's Chamillionaire and Paul Wall, and it's incredible. It's incredible. I think Chamillionaire on one of the songs he says if you play he said it's not even 2005 yet. He said, but if you play this in like 2000 and it's like in now time, maybe like 25, 2020 or something like that, it's still gonna sound like the future. And so when I go back and listen to it, it's still like Chamillionaire is such an underrated rapper that just I think he kind of falls victim if you don't know to what Joe Budden falls victim to, which is Pump It Up. Like Joe Budden falls victim to Pump It Up, and he's a way better MC than that. And Chamillionaire falls victim to Riding Dirty, and he's a way better MC than that.
Mm.
So yeah, so that's my pick. There's a few features on there. There's Devin Dude on there. There's Lil Flip, who was huge at the time. So they cashed in. The record label did the right thing. It's an independent album, but it's definitely super dope. It's called Controversy Sales.
So let me ask this, as somebody who's not super up on the canon of Chamillionaire, does he like acknowledge that album today, or is it really just a blemish, like that almost doesn't count for him? Is it still like
It,
the redheaded stepchild of the catalog?
Definitely the redheaded stepchild. He doesn't count it, and he spoke about it. He's like, I don't like it. They posted my vocals under beats that I didn't even rap on, and but Paul Wall was still cool with the label.
Got
And
it.
Paul Wall's a positive guy, so he's like, all right, contractually I owe you. So he went in and rapped newer verses, but Chamillionaire's verses were older. So Chamillionaire, I'm sure in his ears like a train wreck. But to the fan who just wants to hear this, it's incredible.
So Chamillionaire basically said, "You studied my rhyme, then you laid your vocals
The
after
vocals after
mine.
mine. Yes.
That's a bitch move, something that a homo
A
rapper
homo
would."
rapper would
Okay,
do.
all right, I
Yeah.
got you. All right, no doubt.
That's exactly what happened.
They
That's
basically
exactly what
they
happened.
gave him the posthumous treatment while he was still alive. They did like a
Yes.
Tupac album on it.
Yes. And he was contractually bound by it, so he couldn't do
That's a
anything to
crazy
it. That's
story.
right. It
I,
is.
for one, am shocked because I've never heard of record labels treating artists unfairly in my life. So this just sounds crazy to me.
Never heard of that.
We're going to break the internet with this story here. It's wild.